All right, everybody, good afternoon. Welcome back. Hope you guys are doing well today. We've got ourselves a little bit of Seattle Seahawks breaking news. In the last 15 minutes or so, the Seahawks have made a signing, a re-signing, in fact. And this one's not exactly unexpected, especially after the way the draft went, but it is certainly worth talking about regardless. The Seahawks have re-signed defensive tackle, or I would say more accurately, nose tackle, Johnathan Hankins to a 1-year deal per Tom Pelissero. So Johnathan Hankins is back. He played all 17 games for the Seahawks last year. He's currently 33 years old. So we do now technically have a true nose tackle on the team. So that part of it is good, right? We didn't have a nose tackle. We needed a nose tackle. Now we have one. But do we really have a desirable nose tackle? That's a little bit harder to answer. So here's what I'm going to say about it. A nose tackle in the modern NFL is starting to fade a little bit in terms of its importance compared to, say, the 1980s or even 1990s. So I can understand not placing a super high priority on getting a really good and really valuable one. But at the same time, I think we are swinging the pendulum towards the nose tackle position being a little more valuable than it was 5 or 10 years ago. So if the plan for the Seahawks is to allow that nose tackle position to be occupied by a bunch of UDFA candidates, a bunch of players who should be three techs playing out of position, and Johnathan Hankins, I don't think that's going to be enough to get us where we want to go. You look at Johnathan Hankins, well, first of all, like I said, he just turned 33, and 33 doesn't sound that bad. But when you take a look at the arc of his career so far, you can see that age has caught up to him in a pretty big way, and he is probably at the end of the line. I wouldn't even say going down the end of the line. I feel like he's pretty much at the end of the line. This guy went from team to team for a few different years before he came to Seattle. He was with the Dallas Cowboys for a little bit. He was with the Raiders for a little bit. He was with the Colts and Giants back in his prime years. I guess you would call that his prime years. But this was not exactly a desirable commodity even 2 or 3 years ago. And if you take a look at what he did on the surface level in Seattle last year, it may not look all that bad, especially if you look at him just through the lens of a run stuffer. Like, you remove pass rush. Johnathan Hankins is not on your team to pass rush. I think we all know that. He had a season where he had 7 sacks in 2014. That's a long time ago. Obviously, you're not thinking about that. If you think about him just as a run stuffer, well, Seattle's run defense was pretty decent last year, a big improvement over previous years. And Hankins occupied his role on a surface level competently, right? He had 30 tackles in 17 games, 5 for loss. Average approximate value on PFR is 5. That all seems okay, but then I'm looking at something like his snap count, and I'm looking at him being on the field for less than 400 snaps last year. He's on the field for less than 400, actually almost 350 snaps the year before, and that's only because he missed a few games. Year before that, he's on the field for a grand total of 236 snaps, mostly because he misses a lot of games. So he's already kind of been weaned off of playing a full-time role in this league, and typically you see players get weaned off that full-time role because they need the additional rest to be effective. Is Johnathan Hankins being especially effective out there as a nose tackle because we're only playing him for not even 25 snaps a game on average? According to PFF, the answer is absolutely not. In fact, according to Pro Football Focus, last year, Johnathan Hankins was one of the worst players in the league. And I know that's just PFF, and I know some people are going to say, well, PFF is not very good at grading particular kinds of players, and maybe nose tackles are one of them, but how often are they this wrong? How often are they giving a player a grade of a 35.9, one of the worst graded defensive linemen in football, and they're off by such a radical amount that he's actually good. Like, his PFF grade would have to be almost double this for him to be actually a worthwhile player. And amusingly enough, they actually thought his pass rush grade was much better than his run defense grade. So even if you're trying to filter it through a lens of, well, we don't care about his pass rush, we know he can't rush the passer, it doesn't matter, so run defense is what matters. If that's what you ascribe to, then Hankins looks even worse. And like I said, you know, he's getting put on the field in situations that should be favorable to him. 390 snaps about, and most of them were run defense snaps. So it's not like we're putting him out there in situations where he has to rush the passer. So I'm not really seeing much on this end of it. When I watch him play, he doesn't look very good to me. And this was last year. Now he's 1 year older. What are you going to have to do to get effective snaps out of this guy now? Are you going to have to play him like 10 snaps a game? Can you play him 10 snaps a game just on like obvious rundowns or early downs or something like that? Could you do that? Maybe you could if you had a really awesome nose tackle in front of Johnathan Hankins, if you had an elite guy or maybe a rotation of two good guys in front of Hankins, and then Hankins just kind of mops up whatever snaps are left. That's not what we have. We have really one true nose tackle on the team right now, Johnathan Hankins, and then we have some UDFA guys, and we have some guys that would be playing out of position at nose tackle. So I understand bringing back Hankins at this point because it feels like something you have to do because you didn't draft a nose tackle and you didn't do anything to acquire a good nose tackle in the offseason. But I think that if you're thinking, well, we'll just make do with Hankins in the nose tackle role for 2025, you're going to be in for a very bad time. So I wish I could say that there's more going on here, but the opportunity to acquire a good nose tackle at this point is pretty minimal. Like, you're not going to trade for a great nose tackle at this point. There aren't that many great nose tackles out there. A lot of the ones there are not really for sale. Like, what are you going to do with Johnathan? What are you going to do with Johnathan Hankins playing 35 snaps a game, which is a realistic possibility here? I know that this defense looks really good in most areas, but how are you going to get to those passing downs where you can put your three techs out there, where you can focus on rushing the passer if you don't have a nose tackle that can get you to those passing downs? And right now, the only way I see this working out would be if Jaron Reed is moving to nose tackle for 2025, and this team has already shown a resistance to doing that. So what's the plan? I don't know. In other roster news, the Seahawks waived 4 players earlier today. Quarterback Jaren Hall, which makes sense because we've got too many quarterbacks as it is. Hall was an obvious chopping block guy. Linebacker Michael Dowell, center Michael Nowitzki, and linebacker Kenneth Odumegwu. So not really much to say about any of that. All those guys were very obviously not going to be here long term. There's really no need for them to be here for anything other than like a rookie minicamp invite, and they're not rookies anymore, so they can't even go to that. Well, maybe some of them can because they haven't played in the NFL yet, but there's not much here that requires a roster spot. So that's all the news there. I don't really have anything to say about this. It's pretty obvious. It's fine. But yeah, Johnathan Hankins back on a 1-year deal, and I just wish we had the support system to give him a chance to actually have success, but we don't. See you guys later. Go Hawks.